If you are someone who uses the pec deck machine at your gym, here's a really simple and I think pretty important tip that I didn't know about for years, and I'm kind of pissed about it. So I'm going to share that with you all today. So what's the tip and why is it important? Well, the tip actually occurs during the setup, not actually the execution. So let me scrub back here and go to the beginning of this exercise and show you all how I like to set it up. So what you're going to notice is I'm going to grab one side at a time and then center myself. Okay, so I grab the right side, in this case with both my hands. I basically use my torso and my legs. So you see my right foot right here is planted into the ground to be able to actually use that as an anchor off of which to start to move the handle. I grab the handle with both hands at the same time, and then I grab the other, and by grabbing the other, already having grabbed one side, you basically just get pulled back to the center point pretty easily. So why is this important? Two reasons. One, when you are using a substantial amount of weight on the stack, this is the full stack of this particular machine, it starts to get pretty uncomfortable if you have the handles set up in a position where you can actually get a full stretch. In this case, I was training most specifically my upper chest. It is a little uncomfortable in that very sort of bottom stretch position if you start out the exercise by trying to start in that position, right? In other words, overcoming that initial inertia of the handles not already moving is kind of awkward, kind of clunky, and a lot of times it's quite uncomfortable, especially when you're using this much load. So this is basically a way to circumvent that, and let me just play it one more time so that you all can see from beginning to end this setup just as I go through the important stuff here. So again, both hands, torso, same side leg planted, you grab the other side and just get pulled back to center. Now, that's the first thing, is just like the discomfort of that position. Also, I've seen it happen and I've heard it happen multiple times where people will be in that position, or really just the bottom position of any exercise, really the start position, and they just won't really have, we'll say, the correct orientation for whatever their goal is, right? Not that there's one arm position that's going to be perfect for everyone, obviously not. It just basically creates a little bit more of a safety net in the motion, right? So not that you should be scared of this motion at all, or in general, like starting motions like that, but in my opinion, this is just creating a sort of greater safety net. Now, the other thing that I think is hugely beneficial, and I think this is something that is more principle-based that applies to a lot of different exercises, is that I find it very helpful when the start position of an exercise is not actually in the more lengthened position. So what I mean is the lengthened position of this exercise is this position right here, right? When my arms are kind of at my side, sort of slightly behind my body. The shortened position is when my hands are coming together, being squeezed. And oftentimes you can set the trajectory of a motion really, really well when you start from the end range squeeze and work backward from there, as opposed to trying to start it from the bottom and just trying to sort of figure it out along your way. How many times have a lot of you like started at the bottom of a pec fly, gotten to the end and had to like wiggle around 5 times, okay? So the huge benefit of this is when you pull this machine out this way, okay, you see my arms are still bent, and that's another important piece that I forgot to mention earlier, is as you're doing this, you don't want your arms to be super far away from you, because then you're just gonna be sort of twisted and turned all over the place by the machine. You want to start with the elbows bent, and then to set your trajectory, to set your end range of motion, what you're gonna do from there is start to straighten your elbows a little bit, right? So that last little bit is super important and consequential, where you're coming from this position right here to then basically extending the arms and finding where you want to end up, right? Because essentially, in my experience coaching with people, improving people's execution of exercises, the two most important parts of any exercise are the start and the stop. So if you know exactly where to stop and you know exactly where you're going to return to, of course this is a machine, so it's less consequential compared to if you were using cables or dumbbells or something like that. But it is, in my opinion, very, very helpful from a quality of an execution standpoint to be able to get to that position first, know, okay, here's exactly where I'm gonna end up, and then I'm just gonna start with total control out of that end range position, shortened position, working backward into the stretch and then forward again from there, rather than starting again sort of haphazardly from that stretch position and then trying to figure it out along the way as you're already going through your first reps. And again, if you have an appreciable amount of load on this exercise, and I know some people who will full stack this whole thing plus a gym pin plus a 45 and a 45 and a 45, right? The stronger that you get, the better that you get at the motion, the more consequential that this kind of thing will be. So overall, again, my recommendation, one side at a time, plant that leg, grab the other, keep the elbows close, extend the elbows, find your stop position, and then reverse engineer from there. I think that makes for a much more solid and consistent setup into execution, because ultimately the quality of the execution is really going to depend super, super highly on how you are actually setting yourself up for any kind of exercise. And a pec deck machine, again, is not the most complicated thing in the world to execute, but in my opinion, it makes a real difference. And if it matters to you, give it a try and see how you like it. I think it'll generally improve your execution and your setup on your pec flies, and as a consequence, your chest gains. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more from me, check the links in the description below. I'll see you all in the next one.